Join us today as we discuss blockchain technology for compliance and managing risk. FraudCast.
Hello, fellow fraud fighters. I'm your host, Alexis C. Today we're talking with Ian Worrall of Encrypted Labs, the CEO, about blockchain. Hi, Ian.
Hey Alexis, how are you?
Great. Thank you for joining us again today. After we had done our last episode, I had a number of questions from viewers, and so I wanted to do a follow-up episode so we can answer some of those questions.
Cool.
Great. So the first question is, your bio is really fascinating. Apparently they had seen you on your website. Maybe you could tell our viewers a little bit about how you got to where you are.
Sure. I mean, it's been a long road, but it started back probably when I was like 13 or 14. My parents just always made me work and just taught me the value of a dollar since I was, really young. So then at like 14, I was too young for a part-time job, even though my parents wanted me to start paying for things myself. So I started cutting lawns and everything, and $5 for an hour of work just wasn't cutting it for me. So um, I like really had an interest in stocks and everything, and like a lot of finance, and I really have no idea why. I just liked it and I liked math. So I got my parents to like co-sign a brokerage account with me and used like I guess like the $1,000 that I had saved up from like my whole life um, to fund it. And I've been trading stocks like ever since, and it's really interesting because like nobody in my family has a finance background. I was the first kid to go to college, so it's really interesting that I have no idea where it came from. I guess it was just in my blood, where like I understood it and just got how it worked and everything. So then fast forward till my sophomore year in college, I guess. When I was 19, I took like all the money I accumulated trading, and my dad also gave me 2 grand and said make something with your life, which is pennies to start a company or something. But I mean I did. So I used that and money I've made over the years, and started a tech company, flipped it within like 8 months, and then took like 6 months off, flew a lot of money, did a lot of stupid things a kid would do, and then got serious again my junior year, and that's when I got involved with blockchain and like fintech and everything. And within 6 months of that, I was dropped out of school. Prior to that, I was fortunate enough to get selected to be in Entrepreneurs Organization, their student entrepreneur competition. And I met Jason Jacobs, who's still my advisor today up in Charlotte, while I was still at the University of South Carolina. And within a week of knowing him, he flew me down to Miami to compete in the regional competition where I was a finalist, made it to the nationals. So I was 19 or 20 years old. I think I was 19, and I was like a top 20 student entrepreneur in the country. So then he helped me, get to Charlotte, and like really helped me just have the courage to, drop everything and go after my goals. And ever since then, I just haven't looked back, and I keep growing. I forget life was what it was like before this, but I mean, I'm still young. I'm 22, and relatively successful. A lot of people think that I'm just like a trust fund kid, or I come from a lot of money or something like that, because and it kind of drives me crazy because like I'm self-made, and that's a big thing that a lot of people just view. They see me as kind of like a punk kid that they think that I was just given a lot, but I worked my ass off. Excuse my language.
You worked for everything you have, and you did it.
Yeah,
You
exactly.
did it yourself with some support of the people that were around you that believed in you. I think it's a wonderful story. It's quite an inspiration. So, of all of the things that you could have gone into it as an entrepreneur, what drove you to this blockchain technology? What did you find interesting about it that you said, I want to make that my business and my next thing that I focus my life on?
Well, I actually got involved with it because of Bitcoin. I had no idea what Bitcoin was. It was just like a really volatile thing you could trade and leverage and make a bunch of money on. And then after like trading it for 6 months, I figured I should probably figure out what exactly I'm trading, what this is. I'm seeing news about it, and I did some research and like really wasn't super impressed by Bitcoin. It had some use cases for like transferring money instead of wire transfers and everything, but it was still kind of cumbersome. But the underlying technology like blockchain, I mean, I saw so before like blockchain really got mainstream adopted, and everything I foresaw that was going to happen, like it's happened or it's happening right now. So I'm really happy I did it, and I don't know, I just saw a huge opportunity there and wanted to jump into it.
It seems to me, I mean, my excuse my lack of understanding of completeness of the blockchain, but it seems to me that like with like just before we had relational databases and then we moved on to object-oriented databases, and now this really seems like with the big chain DB that this is really like the next evolution of where we're headed, and that people really need to jump on board.
Yeah, it definitely has a lot of use cases. Like, it doesn't solve every problem that exists in the world. It's not like a full replacement. Like, relational databases and everything will still exist for specific use cases. Um, but I mean, it has the ability to solve just a lot of issues and make processes a lot more efficient.
Mm-hmm.
Specifically with just microfinance, which we talked a lot about in the last one. But then it's projected that like 10% of global GDP is going to be stored on the blockchain by 2025, and that that's trillions of dollars in the next 9 years.
Right.
So they're projecting, and that came from either the IMF or the World Bank. Don't quote me, but I mean it was a pretty reputable source that like predicted that, and so like storing just assets on it, like titles to cars and everything like that, that's really probably going to be like the next big play where it really starts gaining like consumer traction.
Mm-hmm.
But it's definitely cool.
Okay, so our next big question that we had is, what are the things that people are skeptical about regarding robots? How are you addressing those fears with those companies?
Yeah, so like automation, you know, blockchain, smart contracts, it's very similar to just like automating business roles, which, exists in some infrastructures and companies right now. And companies don't like full on automation because they don't trust machines. Even though that over time they've proven to be more efficient and have less error than humans, they still typically want, even in an automated system, they want a human at some point to check over everything and be there in case something goes wrong. So, I mean, we approach it kind of the same way. We integrate something that could be fully automated, but we just add in some human layers and components in the short term, so that companies can, see it firsthand and see that, it's working without the humans, but you still have the humans there just to give them, some security and peace of mind, I guess. And then slowly just work to take, human components out, because the system's actually more secure and runs better without the human components. The human risk is what actually causes a lot of the issues and the mistakes that are made.
As long as everything is implemented properly in the beginning, I absolutely agree with you. I think that in my world, in the anti-fraud world, that any manual process is a huge risk for potential fraud. Absolutely. So I am a huge advocate of system level controls and workflows that could be automated so that you could take out even the possibility that a human could interfere and steal, whatever that looks like. So I agree with you. Excellent. So the next question we have is, it's great to have open architecture with data flowing, but the regulatory environment such as EU and others are concerned about sovereignty of data. They think that it's their own. Cross-border data transfer between countries and data retention where it comes to rest. How does the blockchain technology address those concerns?
Um, the issue is, that's a great question. So that is like one of the issues with like an open, we've talked about that with a lot of companies about how if they have data, specifically like government organizations, if they have data in a public ledger, they want access to that data because data monetization is a huge line of business nowadays. So a big thing with blockchain is it's easy to like assign an owner to a data set and transfer owner. So you can like see, who owns the data, where it's going, and that way you can identify if there's like unauthorized transfers or usage or something like that. But the biggest way that blockchain can do that is through public and private blockchain configurations.
Mm.
So public blockchains would have information that's available to the public or anybody that's not really critical data. It just could be like
It's
basic
open.
arbitrary, yeah, open data, kind of like the open cloud or something like that. And then private blockchain configurations could either be just internally to one company. They're extremely customizable. So it could be one department at one company, or you could even expand it so it's multiple businesses. If Visa and Mastercard and somebody wanted to collaborate and share their data for like one specific function, something, then they could easily do that. So that way you have like open and closed systems with sharing it.
And can you even do that? Because I got this question just before I actually had a call right before this. So the question they wanted to know if you could take that concept at the macro level, right, from company to company, multiple companies, but then what about at the micro level inside the company? Because you know how it works now, right? You have a super user that has access to everything, and then you have things locked down by individual users according to what's appropriate for them to have access to. Can blockchain address that too, like micro inside the organization as well?
Yeah, I mean, we've only experimented with it on the macro level, but we're actually doing something right now. DARPA, the Defense Association
Mm-hmm.
or whatever, they released an RFP in April that we just stumbled across within the past month, and we're looking into. And it was basically that, where it's like taking um, internally like chat boards, making like an open chat board, but then being able to encrypt and decrypt like certain components of it, so only certain people can access it. So
Mm-hmm.
that technology right there is what could be applied internally to companies for like the super admin level and stuff like that. But so the technology itself is there. What we're doing right now is just trying to make it, feasible for companies to use and
Sure.
more user friendly and everything. Because right now it's really techy and it's a lot of code. So we got to make it like just really, really simple. But I mean, something like that's probably like a year away from really being ready to implement.
Mm-hmm.
Might have some like prototypes out within a couple months,
Mm-hmm.
but something like that'll take time because when you're dealing with security and information like that, you can't mess up.
Right,
There's
right.
margin for
And
error.
you have the standards and everything that you have to
Yeah.
comply with. Exactly. I understand. Okay, so the next question was: is your focus on private industry or public government space as well? And if government also, could you please elaborate?
Yeah, so I mean, we're starting in the private sector just because they move way faster than the government does, and we're a startup. We don't have time to bid on projects for 12 months and
It's a
hope that the government.
long pipeline.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, we don't have time for that. We're not Lockheed Martin. We don't have the resources to just spit out proposals nonstop. So we're starting in the private sector because it's where the money is. It's moving a lot faster, and they're the innovators. But I think the public sector, like long term, really has the most benefit from it because I mean, their systems are a mess. Charlotte specifically, like their government, I mean, all these different departments don't work together. I've been through a few meetups where people are talking about it, and like they can't handle big data. They have all these different departments and systems that don't work together, and they want to work together,
Mm.
but they can't. Um, and like blockchain's a pretty good solution for that. And then on like the federal level, I mean, it's a pretty big statement, but I could probably automate like 80% of the IRS in like, under 2 years because it's their system's still like a lot in paper. They miss a lot of things. Audits are extremely inefficient, and it's something. Who was the presidential candidate that said that? Ted Cruz. He wants to get rid of the IRS, but he didn't say how or why or anything. I mean, he needs to talk to me, but it's something that it can be done, but you have to factor in too like the amount of jobs that would be lost if you automated like 80% of the IRS. So like technologically wise, like it's doable, feasibility and like impact on the economy. There's a lot more outside variables.
Sure.
Uh, but that's just one example in the government. But I mean, there's definitely public sector. There's some huge applications. It's just going to take a lot longer because they're still using paper. They haven't even they're not very innovative.
Sure. I know some of the meetings I've been having lately talk about that gap in between Medicaid, Medicare, and how the federal funds come down to the state level. That there's this gap between pushing those funds down and reconciling everything, and a lot of things are happening. Literally, a person in a room, an attorney, and they have negotiations back and forth. But the monitoring and making sure that, almost like the smart contract, right? Making sure that the terms that they agreed to are actually the ones that are being implemented in that system. So I think that it seems to me, at least at the intellectual level, that blockchain would be able to handle something like that, and that would definitely be a federal project.
Oh yeah, definitely. And like I hate to say it, but I mean, there's a lot of fraud that goes on in that. Maybe not
Yeah.
internally with the government, but the people that are interacting with the government and
Yes.
getting these funds, a lot of money just disappears, or it's not reconciled properly or accounted for properly. So it could take years to figure out that $3 million is just gone. You said it went to this project, but it was never verified. And I mean that's a big issue where people are basically stealing like taxpayer money and
Sure.
everything. So using smart contracts and like an open ledger could also show that the general public could access a lot of it and just perform accounting and make sure that everything is working. And that's a more kind of like official. I don't know how the government would feel about that, but it's kind of
check
some
it
people,
out, see if there's a
yeah,
problem to solve, right?
exactly.
Yeah, that's super cool. I mean, I know that in some of the conversations we've been having with Medicaid and Medicare recently is that one of the issues that they have with, let's say, for example, provider fraud. You might have a doctor that is on, the blacklist in one particular state, and then they just go to another state, and then those don't actually talk to each other, and so they have nefarious activities in this state until they get shut down, and then they move on to the next state. So, what would it be like if you had all of those states communicating together on a central platform, and it would be very, very easy to look and see. And then, even beyond that, what if Medicaid and Medicare programs in that same realm talked to each other about these particular individuals have committed fraud? We've proven it, they've been convicted, right? And now they're on this list. And what would it be like if we could push that out to the rest? I think it would drastically reduce the instances of fraud, or at least create red flags that there's a little bit more due diligence that needs to be done before moving ahead and getting these people approved and moving forward. So I think that there's a lot of things that you guys could do in that space.
Definitely. The technology itself isn't hard to do. The hardest part with implementing that is getting all these different organizations to plug into it.
Exactly.
Because it involves everybody kind of working together and using the same ledger system for that. But I mean, it goes a lot beyond Medicare and Medicaid too. Really, it happens in nearly every industry where people find like a loophole, like they find something wrong with PayPal and they're able to like extract a bunch of money from it. And then when that account gets shut down, they just go over to another account. And then when they run out of PayPal, then they go over to Square like somebody else, and they're doing the same thing. So if it was your identity was basically just plugged into a digital ledger where what you actually did followed you and could be traced, it discourages a lot of instances of fraud. So it's a big play. I think it'll happen slowly over time, and it might be decades before it's like truly implemented.
Sure.
But it's definitely the way things are shifting.
So, next question from a viewer is how would the customer? So, I know that you and I were before at the last segment, we talked a little bit about mobile money in particular in Africa. So, that's where this question comes from. How would the customer, the end user, benefit in mobile money in Africa? So, think of the regular citizen, the lady walking down the street. How would she benefit from blockchain technology inside mobile money?
So it work. I mean, right now I'm pretty sure you know better than I do, but they use just like text message like payments and everything over there, right?
Right. So, for our viewers, the way it kind of works is with mobile money payments. So, a large part of the economy rests on transferring cell phone minutes. So, if you did some work for me, instead of paying you in cash, I would pay you with a transfer of my minutes of my phone plan over to you. So it's this transfer that happens of they call it the mobile money. So it's really just a transferring of minutes from my plan to yours. And so in the US, we would consider that an ARS, an alternative remittance system, right? Another way to transfer something of value. So at least my experience in Uganda and investigating these kinds of cases, it works for them because they don't have to carry cash. They don't have to worry about being mugged in the street. They don't have to go into town from you know uh, um, miles and miles away from the city in order to make a transaction. They can just do some things on their phone and it gets done. So I think that the question is coming from that. So how could, in that kind of environment, how could that lady on the street that's using mobile money, how could she benefit from blockchain? Like what would that look like?
A blockchain system works just like that, except I mean, I don't know what exactly. I don't know enough about like how mobile money works and their society and everything to say.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, you use like Bitcoin just for an example. Let's just say
Sure.
I don't know how people feel about it, but if that was implemented over there, it would you can do it right on your phones, just like mobile money and everything. But it's companies around the world accept Bitcoin. So these people are actually transacting just like they do with their cell phone minutes, but they're transacting actual money that can be used for different things. Because inside their, so I guess it opens up their economy to the world. Because like if you're transferring cell phone minutes and you want to buy something in like America or Europe or something, they're not going to accept cell phone minutes as a form of
Exactly.
currency. But there's a lot of companies. I mean, like even Microsoft and Tesla and stuff accept Bitcoin, and you can buy prepaid cards with Bitcoin and everything like that.
Sure.
Where I don't think you can buy like prepaid Mastercards with cell phone
No,
minutes.
you can't.
So if it like basically functions the same exact way, it'd be a really easy implementation too, because they already understand how transferring funds. They're actually ahead of us, I think, than America in terms of like mobile money.
it's really interesting. So what I hear you saying is, right now the only winners in that whole situation are the telecom companies,
Yeah,
because they
exactly.
make money every time that there is a transaction, right? So they have what they call a super agent, which is the institutional level where they buy this huge block of minutes, and then the super agent sells to the agents. So that would be maybe like a person, or maybe like a small store, something like that, and then that person sells to the end user. And so they can go in and they can buy minutes, they can sell the minutes. And so that's really kind of how the transfer of cash happens, is at that level. But every time there's a transaction, it's the telecom company that makes money off of that. Their transaction fees for that.
Yeah, and it seems like it looks like to me at least they have like a monopoly on that over
They
there,
kind
so
of do.
they can assess like any fees they want.
They kind of do. I
So
mean, there's only a few big players. I think really two, three big players, for what I can remember. And but I love your idea that if you changed the what was getting traded to be something that was more universal, then all, the world market is now open to them. I think that's a very interesting concept.
yeah, and I think that's the easiest implementation of it. And blockchain's more of like a peer-to-peer finance, so you get rid of all these intermediaries that are charging fees
Hmm.
and everything with that. So I mean,
It sounds like it would ultimately cost less because you would have to do
right.
less transactions in order to actually pull that off. That's interesting. I don't think the telecom companies would like it very much, but I think that.
No, I wouldn't like it at all. I mean, the one instance where like I did use Bitcoin is like back like a year and a half ago. We had some developers in Eastern Europe, and when I was sending them like I paid them once a month, like their whole salary. It cost like $80 to get a wire transfer over there, plus like currency conversions, and then it took like 3 weeks for it to get deposited in their account.
Right.
So it was like it was ridiculous. It was slow. It was expensive. Like nobody won in that situation. So somebody just suggested I use Bitcoin for it, so I got them like to open up an account over there. It took 5 minutes, and it was credited to their bank account. I didn't pay any fees or anything. It might have been like 0.1% to withdraw, and they had it credited in cash in their local currency within 24 hours in their account. So it definitely that's an example where if in emerging markets they were using stuff like that, it opens them up to the
Right.
global economy. Where
Right.
right now they're really isolated, and that's really stopping their growth, I think. So
That's
that's
true
really
because
interesting.
it really is only what's going on in that country. So that's interesting. Excellent. Next question. Um, so this one was funny. So the general public perception is things from the Hollywood, right? Mission Impossible, Ocean's 11, Now You See Me films. How far do you think we are away from that? Are we there? Are we close? Are we far away? What's your opinion?
Well, Hollywood over dramatizes it. So it's really interesting because some of the technology that I see in like some of these movies, it's made me like think twice. Like if you've ever seen the movie Kingsman,
Yeah.
which I mean I love that movie, but like a lot of it with like cell phone networks and stuff like that is like stuff that we have technology. I mean, it doesn't do exactly that, but it's basically basing it on a lot of technology that pretty much already exists. It's just really over dramatizing it, so I don't think it'll ever be to that effect.
Mm,
Like, and then like iRobot, I always use that as an example
sure.
because you have machines with like 3D printing now that can. They might even call it like 4D printing or something, where it's printers that create other 3D printers and stuff like that. But there's so many like system level controls and stuff like that that I don't really foresee anything like that in the movies or like Terminator or anything. Actually, like I don't think it'll ever happen. I hope not. But yeah, I mean, it is interesting watching them because from like being in the tech industry, like certain parts of it, like that technology in its basic form is there. But it's Hollywood. Their job is to entertain you and make it as interesting as possible. So
But I think it's interesting to at least keep an eye on some of these ideas because I'll date myself now. But I remember the conversation that the original Star Trek, the television show, that's where the concept of the cell phone was originated, right? How can we communicate to each other sort of mobily in that way? You know, and by all rights, the cell phones used to be really big and huge and all of that, and so technology's gotten much better now. But sci-fi drives a lot of innovation just by people being creative about what would it be like if we could actually solve this problem with technology. So I think it's interesting, at least from a direction of inquiry, right? Where's a place that we can
yeah,
drive from
I
maybe
I
some innovation?
I think it gets people thinking and drives innovation. And like another example of that is Star Wars with the holograms.
Oh, sure, yeah,
That's coming to market, and I think 2013 is when it really started. Like they had hologram projectors
right,
and virtual access. You can basically do like a Star Wars communication
right, right.
holograms now. So yeah, it does
Yeah, I think it's fascinating. I think I had read some articles about at MIT, Neil Gershenfeld, if I not messed up his name, was running the bits and atoms department. And so they were the ones that came up with what at the time he called the Fab Lab. And what the Fab Lab was is really what you were talking about, the 4D printer, right? It would make another one. And it was fascinating. They did research where they would take a Fab Lab and then put it into a depressed economy and said, you can make anything you want. What does your economy need? And so some people, they were fishermen and they had an issue with the propeller, and it was so far and so expensive for them to get another propeller when it messed up. So they made a propeller with this Fab Lab, and that's what they needed. And so it helped their economy because they no longer had that issue. Um, Another economy they had, it was in the mountains, and they had a problem with their livestock going off the mountain. So they built this metallic like mesh area so that would keep them from going off. And so it's fascinating to me that if you give something to people, they can figure out with technology how to solve what their problems are. And we don't even really understand all of the needs that are out there. So I think that you're living in a very exciting time, and you're in a very exciting industry to be able to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that technology really benefits the emerging economies and developing economies a lot more than us. Like, we use it for fun, you know?
Sure.
Technology creates Pokemon Go and we get to go run around, but that doesn't solve any real life problems. Maybe it gives you some exercise or something.
Exactly.
But, like, these other countries, like, these people are always looking for solutions. They're not, they're in that situation because they were born into it. They're not stupid people. You give them technology, you give them resources, it's been proven that they can figure out how it works, and like it really helps them. And technology is now a way to like cost effectively like give them an opportunity where they can figure it out, and they can better their lives and really get like their area moving in the right direction. So I like it.
Exactly. Do you have any last thoughts for us before we go today?
I think that's everything unless you have any other questions.
I'm sure there will be more questions, so you might have to slate some time for us maybe to do another segment when people have more questions. Because I think that as people start to get introduced to this, then more questions will come up. So I'm happy to do further episodes to answer some of those questions.
Okay.
All right.
Sounds good. Thanks for your time, Alexis.
All right. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
For more information, contact Ian at info@encryptedlabs.com.